I was the wedding photographer. The groom's surprise for the bride was a mistake. I thought I was just capturing memories of a perfect day, but I was about to become the judge of a man's fate. Nathan, age 32, had been a wedding photographer for 8 years, and in that time, he had witnessed more than 50 couples exchange vows. Each wedding held its own unique magic, but the Thompson wedding felt different from the moment he arrived at the picturesque lakeside venue. The June sun cast a golden glow over the meticulously manicured gardens, where white roses and peonies cascaded from arbors and lined the aisles. Everything about this day screamed perfection, from the bride's flowing gown that seemed to float on air as she walked, to the groom's impeccable navy suit that complemented the wedding's color scheme flawlessly. Nathan moved through the day with practiced efficiency, his camera an extension of himself as he captured the raw emotions and tiny details that would become lifelong memories. He photographed the bride's mother adjusting her daughter's veil, tears glistening in her eyes. He captured the groom's father clapping a proud hand on his son's shoulder, the gesture speaking volumes about their relationship. Each click of his shutter preserved a moment that would otherwise fade with time. As the ceremony concluded and guests moved toward the reception hall, Nathan felt the familiar rhythm of the day shifting from solemn to celebratory. The newlyweds, Madison and Connor Thompson, radiated happiness as they posed for photos against the sunset-painted sky. Madison's laughter was genuine and infectious, while Connor's eyes never left his bride's face. To any observer, they were the picture of perfect love, the kind that storybooks and wedding magazines featured on their covers. The reception hall was transformed into an ethereal space, with fairy lights twinkling from the ceiling and centerpieces of floating candles on each table. Nathan documented the grand entrance, the first dance, and the toasts, his professional demeanor masking the emotional impact of witnessing such intimate moments. He had learned early in his career to create a slight distance between himself and the events he captured, but sometimes, like today, the barrier felt thinner than usual. During a brief break between the dinner service and the dancing, Nathan found himself reviewing the day's images on his laptop. The quality of his work pleased him. He had captured the essence of Madison and Connor's love story in a way that would make them smile for years to come. As he scrolled through the photos, he noticed how Connor's gaze softened whenever it landed on Madison, how Madison's hand naturally found Connor's even when they weren't posing for pictures. These were the subtle details that made wedding photography meaningful to Nathan, the unspoken moments that revealed the true depth of a couple's connection. The evening was progressing flawlessly, with guests enjoying themselves and the wedding party dancing with abandon. Nathan moved through the crowd, capturing candid moments of joy and celebration. He photographed the bride's grandmother, who had been reluctant to attend, now clapping along to the music with tears of happiness streaming down her face. He captured the groom's college friends performing a choreographed dance they had clearly practiced for weeks, their enthusiasm making up for what they lacked in precision. As the night continued, Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that something extraordinary was about to happen. It wasn't based on any specific evidence, just an instinct he had developed over years of observing people on one of the most emotionally charged days of their lives. He had learned to trust these feelings, as they often led to the most memorable photographs. What he didn't realize was that the extraordinary moment he sensed approaching would have nothing to do with his camera and everything to do with a small USB drive that would soon be placed in his hand. The reception was in full swing when Connor approached Nathan, his face illuminated by the multicolored lights from the dance floor. The groom's smile was easy and confident as he motioned for Nathan to step aside with him, away from the noise and celebration. Nathan followed, assuming Connor wanted to discuss some specific photos or perhaps request a particular shot. Instead, Connor reached into his suit pocket and produced a small silver USB drive, holding it out with an air of secrecy. "I have a surprise for Madison," Connor explained, his voice barely audible above the music. "A slideshow of our journey together. I'd like you to play it during the reception, maybe after the cake cutting. It's all set up, just plug it into the laptop they're using for presentations. Connor's eyes held a mischievous glint that Nathan had seen many times before, the look of a groom planning a special moment for his bride. Nathan nodded, accepting the small device. It felt cool in his palm, deceptively ordinary considering the emotional weight it supposedly contained. "Of course," Nathan replied. "I'll make sure it's perfectly timed. Have you tested it on their system?" Connor shook his head. "No time, but it should work fine. It's a simple video file. Madison has no idea about this. I wanted it to be completely unexpected." He glanced back toward the dance floor where Madison was laughing with her bridesmaids. "She's going to love it." With that, Connor rejoined the celebration, leaving Nathan standing near the edge of the room, USB drive in hand. Nathan had been part of many surprise elements at weddings, flash mobs, surprise performances by family members, even the occasional pet brought in for a special appearance. He appreciated how these personal touches made each wedding unique, and he was always honored to be trusted with facilitating such meaningful moments. As he slipped the USB drive into his own camera bag for safekeeping, Nathan couldn't help but feel a slight curiosity about the contents. Over the years, he had created numerous surprise slideshows for couples, weaving together photographs from their relationship journey into a narrative that celebrated their love. He wondered what approach Connor had taken, whether he had focused on their dating years, included childhood photos, or perhaps incorporated messages from friends and family who couldn't attend. The cake-cutting ceremony was approaching, and Nathan prepared his equipment to capture the traditional moment. As he adjusted his camera settings, he found his thoughts returning to the USB drive in his bag. There was something about Connor's demeanor that nagged at him. Not exactly suspicious, but perhaps a bit too casual for someone planning such an important surprise. Most grooms Nathan had worked with were nervous about their surprise elements, double-checking technical details and timing with meticulous care. Connor, on the other hand, had seemed almost relieved to hand off the responsibility, as if eager to distance himself from the task. Nathan brushed aside these thoughts, attributing them to his photographer's tendency to overanalyze moments. He had learned long ago that his role was to document, not to question the personal choices of his clients. Whatever Connor had planned for Madison was their business, and Nathan's job was simply to ensure it was captured beautifully if it happened. The cake cutting proceeded with laughter and the traditional smashing of cake into each other's faces. Madison playfully chased Connor around the table, her white gown swishing as she moved. The guests cheered and applauded, caught up in the joy of the moment. Nathan moved with the action, his camera clicking rapidly as he documented the scene from multiple angles. As the cake was being served to guests, Nathan decided to check the USB drive before the designated presentation time. It was a professional habit, always test technical elements before a live performance. He retrieved the drive from his bag and made his way to the small table where the wedding planner had set up a laptop for presentations and slideshows. The planner, a woman named Clara with an impressively calm demeanor despite coordinating dozens of moving parts, nodded at Nathan as he approached. "Just checking the groom's surprise slideshow," Nathan explained, holding up the USB drive. "Want to make sure it plays smoothly." Clara smiled. "Connor mentioned something about that. He's been quite mysterious about it all week. Madison is going to be thrilled." Nathan inserted the drive into the laptop's USB port, the computer recognizing the device immediately. He navigated to the drive's contents, expecting to find a single video file, or perhaps a folder of images. What he found instead made his breath catch in his throat. There were multiple files on the drive, but only one was labeled "For Madison." The others had cryptic names that seemed to follow a date pattern, and their file sizes suggested they were videos as well. With a growing sense of unease, Nathan double-clicked on the file labeled "For Madison." As the video began to play, he leaned closer to the screen, his professional curiosity warring with a sudden instinct that told him he was about to see something he shouldn't. The video labeled "For Madison" began exactly as Nathan expected, a montage of photographs chronicling Connor and Madison's relationship. There were images from their first date, vacation snapshots, and moments with family and friends. Soft instrumental music played in the background, and text occasionally appeared on screen, highlighting milestones in their journey together. Nathan nodded in approval. It was a thoughtful tribute that would undoubtedly touch Madison's heart. As the video progressed through their relationship timeline, Nathan found himself impressed by Connor's effort. The slideshow was well constructed, moving seamlessly from one phase of their relationship to the next. There were childhood photos of both Madison and Connor, followed by images from their college years, then their meeting at a mutual friend's wedding. The narrative was clear and heartfelt, two people who had found their perfect match after years of searching. When the video reached their engagement, Nathan felt a professional pride in recognizing some of his own photographs among the collection. He had been there when Connor proposed at the same lakeside venue where they were now celebrating their marriage. The golden hour light had been perfect that day, and Nathan had captured the moment Connor dropped to one knee, the surprise and joy evident on Madison's face. The slideshow continued with images from their wedding planning process, cake tastings, dress fittings, venue visits. Each photo reinforced the narrative of a couple deeply in love, excitedly building their future together. Nathan found himself smiling, glad that he would be part of presenting this touching tribute to the newlyweds and their guests. It was as the video transitioned from the wedding planning phase to what Nathan assumed would be a conclusion that something shifted. The music changed slightly, becoming more melancholic, and the images began to feel less like a cohesive collection and more random. There were still photos of Madison, but they were interspersed with images of Connor alone or with friends, sometimes in locations that didn't seem to fit the relationship timeline. Nathan frowned, confused by the sudden change in tone and content. He wondered if Connor had perhaps accidentally included some outtakes or irrelevant files in the slideshow. As he reached for the mouse to stop the video and check the other files on the USB drive, his attention was caught by a particular image that made his blood run cold. The photograph showed Connor in what appeared to be a hotel room, his arm around a woman Nathan had never seen before. They were both dressed formally, as if coming from an event, and their body language suggested an intimacy that went beyond friendship. Connor was leaning into the woman, his lips close to her ear as she laughed at something he had said. The timestamp on the image showed it was taken just 3 months ago, well after Connor and Madison had gotten engaged. Nathan's heart began to pound as he continued watching, unable to tear his eyes away from the screen. The next image showed the same woman sitting on what appeared to be a bed, looking directly at the camera with a knowing smile. In the background, Connor could be seen adjusting his tie in a mirror. The setting was clearly not a professional environment, and the casual intimacy between them was undeniable. What followed was a series of photographs and short video clips that painted a devastating picture of Connor's secret life. There were images of him and the mystery woman at restaurants, in parks, and what appeared to be various hotel rooms. Some photos showed them holding hands, others captured moments of tenderness, a kiss on the forehead, a gentle caress of the cheek. Each image was another nail in the Connor's fidelity. Nathan felt sick to his stomach as he realized what he was seeing, undeniable proof of the groom's affair, accidentally included in what was supposed to be a romantic tribute to his bride. The worst part was that some of the most incriminating images appeared to have been taken recently, even within the past month, mere weeks before the wedding. As the video continued, Nathan's professional detachment shattered completely. He was no longer just a photographer documenting someone else's story. He had become an unwilling confidant to a terrible secret. The woman in the photos was clearly not Madison, yet the affection between her and Connor was unmistakable. These weren't casual encounters, they were moments of genuine intimacy and connection. The video finally ended with a black screen and white text that read, "Our journey continues," followed by, "I love you, Madison, forever." The irony of these words, following the evidence of Connor's betrayal, was almost too much to bear. Nathan stared at the screen, his mind racing as he tried to process what he had just witnessed. He quickly closed the video file, his hands trembling slightly as he navigated back to the USB drive's contents. Against his better judgment, he found himself opening one of the other files, a video file labeled with a date from 6 months ago. The footage showed Connor and the mystery woman in what appeared to be a cozy apartment, cooking dinner together and laughing as they shared a bottle of wine. The domesticity of the scene was perhaps more painful than the hotel room photos. It suggested a relationship that had depth and substance, not just physical attraction. Nathan closed the file, feeling as though he had violated something sacred by viewing these private moments. He hadn't meant to pry, but now that he knew, he couldn't unsee what he had witnessed. The USB drive in his possession was no longer just a wedding surprise. It was evidence of a deception that could shatter a young woman's world on what should have been the happiest day of her life. A glance at his watch told Nathan that he had been at the laptop for nearly 10 minutes, longer than necessary to simply check a video file. The cake had been served, and guests were beginning to return to the dance floor. Soon, it would be time for the traditional special dances and other wedding formalities. Connor would be expecting him to play the slideshow, unaware that he had handed over a drive containing not just a romantic tribute, but also proof of his infidelity. Nathan's mind raced as he considered his options. He could simply play the intended video, skipping over the other files on the drive. He could pretend he had technical difficulties and abandon the slideshow altogether. Or he could confront Connor with what he had found, forcing a confession before the evidence could be publicly displayed. Each option carried its own consequences, and Nathan knew that whatever he decided would have a lasting impact on multiple lives. As he sat there, paralyzed by the weight of his discovery, Nathan heard someone approaching. He quickly closed all the files and removed the USB drive from the laptop, slipping it into his pocket as he turned to face the wedding planner, Clara, who was walking toward him with a questioning look. "Everything okay with the slideshow?" Clara asked, her brow furrowed with concern. "Connor just asked if we were still on track to play it after the parent dances." Nathan forced a smile that felt brittle on his face. "Just checking the technical aspects," he replied, his voice steadier than he expected. "Everything should work fine." Clara nodded, seemingly satisfied with his response. "Great. The parent dances are starting in about 15 minutes, so we'll need it ready to go shortly after that." As Clara walked away to attend to another detail, Nathan felt the USB drive burning a hole in his pocket. He had less than 20 minutes to decide what to do, a decision that would determine whether Madison's perfect day ended with celebration or devastation. The next 15 minutes passed in a blur for Nathan as he moved through the reception hall, his camera in hand but his mind elsewhere. He photographed the traditional parent dances with mechanical precision, his fingers adjusting settings and his eye framing shots automatically, while his thoughts raced with the moral dilemma he faced. As he watched Madison dance with her father, her head resting on his shoulder and her expression one of pure contentment, Nathan felt a pang of guilt. She was living in a bubble of happiness, completely unaware that in mere minutes, that bubble could burst in the most public and humiliating way imaginable. The trust she placed in Connor was evident in every smile, every tender touch, a trust that Nathan now knew was misplaced. When it was Connor's turn to dance with his mother, Nathan focused his lens on the groom, searching for any sign of remorse or anxiety that might betray his secret. To his surprise, Connor appeared completely at ease, his smile genuine as he twirled his mother around the dance floor. Either he was an exceptional actor, or he had compartmentalized his life so thoroughly that the betrayal of his fiancée didn't weigh on his conscience during their wedding day. Nathan's mind continued to cycle through possible courses of action, each with its own set of consequences. The most straightforward option was to play only the intended slideshow, carefully avoiding the other files on the USB drive. This would preserve the appearance of a perfect wedding day, delaying the inevitable revelation of Connor's infidelity to a later, more private time. But this choice also made Nathan complicit in the deception, allowing Madison to continue in her ignorance while publicly celebrating a marriage built on lies. Alternatively, Nathan could claim technical difficulties and refuse to play the slideshow altogether. This would likely disappoint Connor and possibly raise questions, but it would avoid the immediate devastation that could result from accidentally playing the wrong files. However, this approach only postponed the problem. Connor's secret would eventually come out, and when it did, Madison might wonder why Nathan hadn't somehow warned her. The most confrontational option was to speak directly to Connor before the slideshow was scheduled to play, giving him a chance to come clean privately or cancel the presentation altogether. This approach appealed to Nathan's sense of justice, but it also placed him in the middle of a volatile situation that could escalate quickly. How would Connor react to being confronted with evidence of his affair on his wedding day? Would he become defensive or aggressive? Would he deny everything, leaving Nathan in an even more complicated position? As Nathan weighed these options, he found himself considering a fourth possibility, one that both frightened and intrigued him. He could intentionally play the wrong files, allowing the evidence of Connor's infidelity to be revealed publicly. This approach would undoubtedly cause immediate chaos and heartbreak, but it would also ensure that Madison learned the truth before the marriage was legally and emotionally cemented. It would be a betrayal of his professional role as a neutral observer, but perhaps a service to Madison as a human being deserving of the truth. The parent dances concluded, and guests returned to the dance floor as the band struck up an upbeat tune. Nathan knew he had only minutes left before Connor would expect him to set up the slideshow. He needed to make a decision, and soon. Moving to a quiet corner of the reception hall, Nathan leaned against a wall and closed his eyes, trying to quiet the turmoil in his mind. He had been in difficult situations before at weddings, family conflicts, technical disasters, even a case where a bride had a panic attack just before walking down the aisle. But nothing had prepared him for this moral crisis, where his actions could determine whether a woman's marriage began with celebration or devastation. As he stood there, Nathan's thoughts drifted to his own experiences with love and betrayal. He remembered his first serious relationship in college, how he had discovered his girlfriend was cheating on him with his roommate. The pain of that discovery had been sharp and immediate, but he had always been grateful that he learned the truth before investing more years in a relationship built on deception. Would Madison feel the same way if she discovered Connor's infidelity now, rather than months or years into their marriage? Nathan also considered the other people involved, not just Madison and Connor, but their families and friends who had gathered to celebrate this union. A public revelation would cause embarrassment and pain not just for the couple, but for everyone who had invested emotionally and financially in this wedding. Was it fair to subject them all to such a scene? With a sigh, Nathan opened his eyes and made his decision. He couldn't in good conscience allow Madison to continue in her ignorance, celebrating a marriage based on deception. But neither could he bring himself to create a public spectacle that would cause maximum humiliation to everyone involved. He would confront Connor privately, giving him the opportunity to do the right thing, to come clean to Madison himself before the evidence could be revealed in a more damaging way. With his course of action determined, Nathan scanned the room for Connor, finding him near the bar, laughing with his groomsmen. As Nathan approached, Connor turned to him with an expectant smile. "Time for the slideshow?" Connor asked, raising his glass in a small toast. Nathan shook his head slightly. "I need to speak with you privately for a moment," he said, keeping his voice low but firm. "It's important." Connor's smile faltered, confusion evident in his expression. "Can it wait? We're kind of in the middle of the reception." Nathan met Connor's gaze directly. "It can't wait. It's about the slideshow." At the mention of the slideshow, Connor's expression shifted from confusion to concern. He excused himself from his friends and followed Nathan to a small antechamber off the main hall, away from the noise and celebration. Once they were alone, Nathan removed the USB drive from his pocket, holding it between them like evidence in a courtroom drama. "I checked the video file you wanted me to play," Nathan began, choosing his words carefully. "And I found some other files on the drive as well." Connor's face paled slightly, though he tried to maintain a casual demeanor. "Oh, those are probably just some old files I forgot to remove. Nothing important." Nathan's expression remained serious. "I think you should look at what's on this drive before I play anything for your guests, particularly the files with dates from the past few months." As Connor reached for the USB drive, his hand trembled slightly. Their fingers brushed, and Nathan felt the chill of the groom's sweat against his own skin. In that moment, Nathan knew that Connor was aware of exactly what was on the drive, and that the surprise slideshow was either a careless mistake or a subconscious cry for help. The antechamber was silent except for the muffled sounds of celebration from the main hall. Connor's hand hovered over the USB drive before he finally took it, his fingers closing around it with a reluctance that spoke volumes. He didn't immediately look at Nathan. Instead, his gaze darted toward the door, as if considering escape. "What exactly did you see?" Connor asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Nathan decided to be direct but measured in his response. "I saw photographs and videos of you with another woman, someone who is clearly not Madison. Some of the images were taken as recently as a few weeks ago." The color drained from Connor's face, and he leaned against the wall for support. The confident groom from moments before had been replaced by a man cornered by his own deception. For a long moment, he said nothing, simply staring at the USB drive in his hand as if it were a venomous snake. "I can explain," Connor finally said, though his tone suggested he wasn't convinced of his own ability to do so. Nathan shook his head slightly. "I'm not the one who needs an explanation. Madison does. And she needs it before I play any slideshow or before this marriage progresses any further." Connor's eyes widened in panic. "You can't tell her. Not today. Please, we can work this out later, privately." The desperation in Connor's voice might have elicited sympathy from Nathan under different circumstances, but now it only reinforced his decision. "Connor, you're standing here on your wedding day, having just vowed to love and cherish Madison for the rest of your life, while evidence of your ongoing infidelity is sitting on a drive in your hand. The time for privacy was before you made those vows, before you invited all these people to witness your commitment, before you let Madison invest her heart and future in this marriage." As Nathan spoke, he could see the internal battle playing out across Connor's face, the desire to maintain the facade of the perfect wedding day, warring with the undeniable truth of his actions. Nathan knew this was a critical moment, not just for Connor and Madison, but for himself as well. He had crossed a line from neutral observer to active participant in this drama, and there was no turning back. "What do you want from me?" Connor asked, his voice breaking. "I want you to do the right thing," Nathan replied. "I want you to tell Madison the truth yourself before this slideshow accidentally plays the wrong files and exposes you in the most humiliating way possible. I want you to give her the respect of an honest explanation, rather than letting her discover your betrayal publicly." Connor sank into a nearby chair, his head in his hands. "I can't. Not today. Look, this woman, it's over between us. It was a mistake, something that shouldn't have happened. It ended weeks ago." Nathan remained standing, his posture firm. Whether it's over or not doesn't change the fact that it happened. It doesn't change the fact that you've been lying to Madison, and you were about to celebrate a marriage built on those lies. The only question now is whether you tell her yourself or let the evidence do it for you. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken consequences. Nathan could hear his own heartbeat, could feel the weight of the decision he had forced upon Connor. He knew that what happened next would shape not just the immediate future of this wedding day, but the long-term emotional well-being of everyone involved. Finally, Connor looked up, his eyes red-rimmed but resolute. "You're right, I need to tell her." He stood slowly, as if carrying an invisible burden. "But I need to do it my way, in my own time. Not here, not now." Nathan shook his head. "There is no your own time anymore. There's only now, before more damage is done. Every minute you delay is another minute of deception, another lie that Madison will have to process when she learns the truth." As they stood facing each other, the door to the antechamber opened, and Clara, the wedding planner, peeked in. Everything okay in here? Connor, your bride is asking for you. They're about to cut the anniversary cake." Connor flinched at the mention of Madison, his face contorting with a mixture of fear and resignation. "I'll be right there," he said, his voice strained. Clara looked between Nathan and Connor, her professional instincts telling her something was amiss. "Is everything all right?" Before Nathan could respond, Connor spoke. "Everything's fine, just having a moment with the photographer about some shots we want to get later." Clara didn't look convinced, but she nodded and closed the door, leaving them alone again. "You see?" Connor said, turning to Nathan. "Everyone is waiting. Everyone expects this to be a perfect day. Can't we just let them have that? Can't we let Madison have this one perfect memory before everything falls apart?" The plea in Connor's voice was almost convincing, but Nathan held his ground. "The only thing you'll be giving Madison by continuing this deception is a perfect memory built on a foundation of lies. Every photograph I take tonight, every moment she cherishes from this day will be tainted when she eventually learns the truth. And she will learn the truth, Connor. It's better that it comes from you now than from some accidental discovery months or years from now." Connor closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, Nathan saw something shift. Perhaps acceptance, perhaps just exhaustion from maintaining the charade. "What do I say? How do I even begin to explain this?" Nathan's expression softened slightly. "That's something only you can figure out. But I would suggest starting with honesty. No more lies, no more omissions. Just the truth, however difficult it might be to hear." As Connor nodded slowly, Nathan felt a sense of relief mixed with apprehension. He had done what he believed was right, but he knew the difficult conversations were just beginning. The perfect wedding day was about to shatter into a million pieces, and while Nathan didn't regret his role in exposing the truth, he couldn't help but feel sorrow for the pain that was about to unfold. "I need to find Madison," Connor said, his voice quiet but determined. "Before this goes any further." Nathan nodded in acknowledgement. "I'll be here if you need me." As Connor walked toward the door, Nathan called out to him. "Connor, wait." The groom turned back, and Nathan continued. "Whatever happens next, remember that Madison deserves to make her own decisions with full information. Don't try to minimize what you've done or manipulate her reaction. Just give her the truth and let her decide how to proceed." Connor nodded once, then exited the antechamber, leaving Nathan alone with his thoughts and the knowledge that he had irrevocably changed the course of this wedding day, and potentially the lives of everyone involved. Nathan remained in the antechamber for several minutes after Connor left, gathering his thoughts and preparing for whatever might happen next. He could hear the celebration continuing in the main hall. Laughter, music, the clinking of glasses, sounds that now seemed tragically ironic given the conversation that had just taken place. He knew that in a matter of minutes, those joyful sounds could be replaced by confusion, anger, and heartbreak. As he stepped back into the reception hall, Nathan scanned the room, his photographer's eye taking in details that now carried added significance. He saw Madison's parents chatting animatedly with the groom's parents, completely unaware of the bombshell that was about to be dropped. He noticed the wedding cake, perfectly constructed and waiting to be cut, its beauty soon to be overshadowed by emotional turmoil. He observed guests laughing and dancing, their enjoyment built on the premise of a genuine celebration of love, a premise that had just been proven false. Nathan spotted Connor moving purposefully through the crowd, his face pale but determined. He was making his way toward Madison, who was surrounded by her bridesmaids, all of them admiring her engagement ring and talking excitedly about honeymoon plans. The contrast between Madison's innocent happiness and Connor's guilty mission was stark, and Nathan felt a pang of sympathy for the bride who was about to have her world shattered. Rather than following Connor, Nathan maintained a strategic distance, positioning himself near the edge of the room where he could observe without intruding. His role as photographer gave him a legitimate reason to be present with his camera, but he knew that capturing this moment would require a delicate balance between professional documentation and respect for privacy. As Connor reached Madison's group, the bridesmaids noticed his approach and quieted, sensing the seriousness of his expression. Madison turned to him with a smile that gradually faded as she registered the tension in his posture and the anguish in his eyes. "Can I speak with you alone?" Connor asked, his voice carrying just enough to reach Nathan's position. Madison's brow furrowed with concern, but she nodded, allowing Connor to lead her toward a quieter area of the hall, away from most of the guests. Nathan followed at a discreet distance, his camera ready but lowered, giving them the illusion of privacy while remaining close enough to document whatever happened next. What followed was a conversation that Nathan could only partially observe from a distance, but the emotional trajectory was clear even without hearing the words. He watched as Connor began speaking, his body language conveying apology and remorse. He saw Madison's expression shift from confusion to disbelief, then to dawning horror as the truth of Connor's words sank in. He documented the moment her hands flew to her mouth in shock, the tears that began streaming down her face, the way she physically recoiled from Connor's attempt to touch her arm. The other guests gradually became aware that something was wrong, the music continuing but the dancing slowing as people turned to watch the unfolding drama. The wedding planner, Clara, rushed toward the couple, her professional calm momentarily forgotten as she tried to assess and manage the situation. Nathan continued to photograph, his movements careful and unobtrusive. He captured the raw emotions playing across Madison's face: betrayal, anger, devastation. He documented Connor's posture, slumped with shame and regret. He recorded the reactions of family members as they approached and learned what was happening, their expressions ranging from shock to fury. The decision Madison made next surprised Nathan. Rather than dissolving into hysterics or creating a scene, she straightened her shoulders, wiped away her tears with a determination that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside, and turned to face the room full of guests. With a quiet dignity that was nothing short of remarkable, she addressed them, her voice steady despite the emotion evident in her trembling hands. "I'm sorry to interrupt your celebration," she said, her voice carrying through the now silent room. "It appears there has been a development that changes the nature of this evening. Connor and I will not be continuing with the remainder of the wedding festivities." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd, followed by murmurs of confusion and concern. Madison's mother rushed to her side, wrapping an arm around her shoulders, but Madison gently shook her head, indicating she needed to handle this herself. "I want to thank you all for coming and for sharing in what should have been a joyous occasion," Madison continued, her voice gaining strength. "I ask for your understanding as Connor and I deal with this privately. Please enjoy the food and music, but know that the formal part of this evening is concluded." With that, Madison turned and walked away from the center of the room, her head held high despite the tears that continued to fall. Her family and bridesmaids followed, creating a protective cluster around her as they moved toward the exit. Connor remained standing alone in the center of the room, the abandoned groom in his own wedding reception. Nathan continued to document the aftermath, the confusion of the guests, the attempts by the wedding planner to salvage some order from the chaos, the gradual dispersal of the crowd as people realized the celebration was truly over. He photographed Connor's parents as they confronted their son, their expressions a mixture of anger and disappointment. He captured the moment Connor finally sank into a chair, his face buried in his hands, the picture of a man who had lost everything through his own actions. As the reception hall gradually emptied, Nathan found himself alone with the remnants of what should have been a perfect wedding day. Half-eaten plates of food sat on tables, centerpieces still cast their romantic glow, and the wedding cake stood untouched, a monument to a celebration that would never be completed. Before leaving, Nathan approached Connor, who remained slumped in his chair, isolated in the middle of the emptying room. "I'm sorry it turned out this way," Nathan said, his voice gentle. Connor looked up, his eyes red and swollen. "I did this to myself. I know that." "What happens now?" Nathan asked, though he wasn't sure Connor had an answer. Connor shook his head slowly. "I don't know. Madison said she needs time, that we need time apart before we decide anything. She's staying with her parents tonight. I guess I just go back to an empty house and try to figure out how I messed everything up so badly." Nathan nodded, unsure of what else to say. He had done what he believed was right, but seeing the aftermath firsthand made him question whether there might have been a better way to handle the situation. Still, he knew that allowing the deception to continue would only have caused more pain in the long run. "I'll be sending you the photos from today," Nathan said, his professional persona reasserting itself. "Let me know if you need anything else." As Nathan packed up his equipment and prepared to leave, he took one last look around the room that had been filled with such joy just hours earlier. The USB drive containing Connor's secret was still in Nathan's camera bag, a small device that had unraveled a wedding and potentially a marriage. He considered what to do with it, finally deciding to leave it with the wedding planner, who could return it to Connor or dispose of it as she saw fit. Driving home in the early hours of the morning, Nathan reflected on the day's events. He had been hired to document a celebration of love, but instead, he had become the catalyst for exposing a betrayal. As a wedding photographer, his role was to preserve memories, but tonight, he had helped create a memory that would likely haunt both Madison and Connor for the rest of their lives. The question of whether he had done the right thing would linger with Nathan for a long time. He had violated his professional neutrality, potentially overstepping his boundaries as a service provider. Yet, he had also prevented Madison from entering a marriage built on deception, potentially saving her from even greater heartbreak down the road. As Nathan downloaded the day's photographs to his computer, he found himself lingering on the images he had taken before the truth came to light. Madison's radiant smile as she walked down the aisle, Connor's tender expression as he watched his bride approach, the joy on their faces as they were pronounced husband and wife. These photographs now seemed like artifacts from an alternate reality, a world where the wedding day had proceeded as planned and the couple had begun their marriage with hope and happiness. Nathan knew he would eventually edit and deliver these photos to both Madison and Connor, as was his professional obligation. But he also knew that these images would forever carry the weight of what happened after they were taken, the truth that transformed a celebration into a tragedy, a beginning into an ending. In the end, Nathan concluded that his role as a wedding photographer was more complex than simply capturing beautiful images. Sometimes it meant bearing witness to difficult truths, and occasionally it meant being the instrument through which those truths came to light. The USB drive had been Connor's mistake, but what Nathan did with the knowledge it contained was his own choice, a choice that had irrevocably changed the course of two lives on what should have been the happiest day of their lives.